this looks good.
Oh my God, this is delicious.
All right, so now we are going to move into our plate of the day. So, real life dating while being a Black woman. So,
Oh wow.
honest, yeah,
Child, let me pour some more wine because
yes, yeah, get ready for it, right? Because I think that what has me thinking about this a lot is again Clubhouse, fucking Clubhouse has taken my life, right? And
hey,
I
I live
see
there
so
now.
many rooms where women are talking about different facets about their dating, different facets about their relationships. And I want to open up this conversation. Like obviously you, Daigi, as a Black woman, will speak from your perspective. And I'm interested in talking about Black femme in general. You know what I mean? Not just Black cis women, but like in general, there is an experience that Black women have dating. And for me, I think being Dominican and not using the word Black because we were not taught to use the word Black because we didn't know that we were the same kind of Black. So I would always say Dominican as I'm like, yes, I'm Dominican. I'm the Black people I'm the Black person of the Latinos. Like that's what I would say. I'm the Black of them, but not understanding that I was quite literally ancestrally the same thing. So, I think that one of the ways for me in which I was very aware of my Blackness as a woman was that being in high school, LaGuardia High School Performing Arts, and having all these white boys in my department, I always had a fear of my dark pussy. Like, I was like, I know all these white girls got this pretty pink pussy, right? And I also knew that, or I imagined in my head, right, that even the other girls that were Black, that were more melanated than me, in my head, I was like, oh, but they still look one tone. I'm tan here. And then when you get down there, it gets a little darker and it would horrify me. I'd be like, oh, that's so ugly and whatever. And like, why does my pussy need to be that kind of Black? And because my pussy looks like that, nobody's going to want to fuck my pussy, right? And so like, it's weird because like my body was like the point, and it was literally the skin, the color of my skin that started to make me feel ick about my place. But that's just one piece of like how self-awareness as a Black woman in the dating scene manifests. And I went straight to sex, but there's like literally a million other things. Another thing that I'm always aware of is, am I too aggressive or like doing too much, or like Dominican women are always crazy, like all of these things that I'm like micromanaging my behavior around framework that people place upon Black women. That is just a framework. It's not a reality of how we all behave. And so it's something that I think about a lot. But Daigi, you and I talk about dating a lot anyway, right? And I know you have a great deal to say around the topic. And I'm curious, initially, what is your perception and relationship with your Blackness, and then as it relates to the dating scene?
For me, I feel like I always kind of show up, not even kind of, I always show up as my whole self. And I feel like that's sometimes a problem for most men that I date, no matter their race, because I don't discriminate, except for white men. But, and that's also coming from like experience as well too, because like I also like before, like I used to always be like, ew, white man, ew, no. And like, you're literally like the epitome of like a white supremacy, and I literally just can't, right? And I would say that, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm also the type of person that like I need to learn by doing. So I was like, okay, let me like, white men would come around and I would never give them a chance. And I would just be like, okay, at one point I was just like, well, let me just try to give it a chance to see, just so that I can speak from my experience versus me speaking from my bias or speaking from like prejudice or whatever, right? So I was like, let me give this white man a chance. Okay, now I know it's a no. So I tried it, did it, it didn't work. So I feel like no matter what color, race, ethnicity that I date, I always feel or have felt like with the people that I've chosen, because I know this isn't true for everyone, but also I'm not here to date everyone. I'm here to date who I want.
Right.
And yeah, so I feel like it's always an issue because I feel like people have this perception of you, I've learned, before you even show up in their space or even begin to share space with them. They have this perception of Black women. They have this perception of you as a Black woman. Depending on the details that that you've given them, they try to make sense of you, or they try to like put you in a box. And I feel like for me, I've always kind of bust the seams of that box, not even a little bit, but a lot of it, in ways that makes the men that I'm in a relationship with uncomfortable, whether it's what I choose to do for myself, or how much my ambition, whether it's the things that I'm interested in that they can't really relate to, whether it's my upbringing that they can't really relate to, or where I see myself that they can't see themselves, and then they get intimidated by that and then try to like write me off as someone that's like, you know, selfish or whatever the case may be, because like they all want the best for you until the best for you maybe don't include them, and then you're just a bitch, right? So it's been very mixed in my experiences, but I think that one commonality has been true, is that I feel like people want very much to box me in, and I don't really adhere to that. And it's not really out of an act of rebellion or what have you. I'm literally just being myself. And I just felt like in the situations that I've been in, it's just been, at some point, it becomes to be too much for people.
And I feel like there's also this thing, right, where like somebody could hear what we're talking about and say, oh, but that's not because you're Black, that's because you're a woman. What are some of the ways in which you can attest to the fact that actually your Blackness has something to do with it, and it's not this narrative that this is just how women behave and we're judging you for being a woman and not because you're Black?
I think, I feel like the only concrete things that I can come up with is like when I was indeed like dating white men, and I was like kind of testing that out, and it didn't work for several reasons. And I think one of the biggest thing for me, and the most pivotal moment, was when I remember I even put up an Instagram post about this, because it literally like was something that I just felt so compelled to like speak out about and kind of bring a little bit of transparency to. But I can't remember exactly what was said verbatim, but it was something to the effect of like someone kind of like letting me know, or this white man basically telling me like, or asking me why I'm so, I guess why I'm so guarded, you know? And I feel like for any woman, that would be a question that their significant other would ask them if they're in a place where they feel, you know, they've been hurt before, or they've been through situations that have taught them one lesson and they don't want to learn that lesson again. So they're being a lot more careful and like, you know, in their approach when it comes to dating. But it was also, this is what it was. Well, he was basically telling me like, oh, well, I'm not worried about you. Like, you can take care of yourself. And I'm like, you know, well, I get that. And I understand that, but I don't want to always have to do that. And like, I don't always want to have to like sort of, and he was talking about in the physical sense, right? And I was just like,
right, like because I'm Black and I could fight and I could defend myself.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And it was like kind of annoying, because I'm like, because like, of course he's drawing on, one, we have shared common space as far as like training with like, and people know that like, you know, me in the fitness realm and everything, like I like trained in like Muay Thai and like things like that. And so like he has that, or boxing and things like that. So like he has that experience of seeing me in that realm. Yes. But then also, in the sense that like he was kind of pulling on, and he made it very clear that like, you know, based on like where I'm from, and like, you know, because I'm from the Bronx, and like, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, yeah, no. And it kind of turned me off, because I'm just like, that's not how I'm showing up as in this space with you. Because like, whether or not I'm a fighter in the literal sense, or in the you know, figurative sense, I'm also very much a woman. And if you're someone that's joining this space in me and trying to make me your woman, like, why do I have to fight for myself when you're here. And like, for me, that's just kind of like how I feel about it. Like, I can fight for myself, yes, but I also don't want to have to do that all the time. And I also felt like it became this bigger conversation of like me having to be strong all the time and not wanting to occupy that space all the fucking time. Like, I want someone that I can be soft with. I want someone that I can like be vulnerable and kind of, you know, let them take on that role and I don't have to do it. And that's what he was telling me too, was just like, well, like, I don't have to worry about that with you because you can handle it. Or like, you know what I mean? And it was very much like, ew. You know what I mean? Like, would you tell the same white woman who grew up in fucking Chelsea the same thing? No, you wouldn't. Whether or not she like was taking boxing lessons or whatever, like, you know what I mean? And it was very irritating. And I feel like what thing that like white men don't understand, not all of them, but I haven't met the ones who do yet, child. So I'm just speaking from that perspective.
Hey, it's your truth. It's your truth.
Yeah, like there are different like, yeah, they may be walls up when you date this Black woman who is dating white men for the first time, but also understand that this wall is built differently as well. The foundation is completely different. The way the bricks are laid are completely different because it's based on a lot of these things that you cannot relate to. You know what 100%. I'm saying? Even when it comes to the space of like physicality, like this was at one point when like my hair was shorter and he was very much like, you should grow it out again so I can play in it. And I'm like, bitch, I don't even play in my hair.
Right. This is not a playground, sir.
Like, okay, like little things like that. And it was very irritating that I'm just like, I know that wouldn't be a thing. If someone had like long, straight, silky hair, you wouldn't be as fascinated by that. And like, you know, it was just weird. Like there were just a lot of like red flags. And I was just like, yeah, you've never done this before.
I think I love that you brought up this idea of toughness and strength. Because I have always experienced that. And I often say that I think that that's also why a lot of the white boys who fucked with me heavy, like as a person, heavy, could never see themselves liking me because they automatically assumed this toughness and like roughness about me. And so I was then tomboyish and I'm Black anyway. And they're not even into like, they didn't grow up around a bunch of Black people intimately, right? They're from New York, but like not in an intimate way. And so it's kind of like, yeah, she's one of the boys, but we know she's not like, we don't think she's a lesbian. Like, it's like the respect line is like, oh, well, we don't think you're a lesbian. We just think you're like super tough and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So that's supposed to be some sort of fucking compliment, and I think that I definitely internalized a lot of that because both in my dating life, having this, like, I wasn't used to guys even opening doors, and this idea of chivalry was not really a thing. And I've never been with a white man, and not on purpose, just because they've never been drawn to me, but like even dating while Black, like flipping it and talking about Black guys, there's a way in which the way that people have been socialized to perceive the Black woman has also lent itself to, in some cases, to how Black men continue that behavior to their Black women, same or worse as some of these white dudes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not opening the door. They don't like give a fuck. Like they're not trying to be soft and tender with you because in their head, they're just so prepared to argue with you. And somehow, and I wouldn't go as far as saying like, oh, like the Black woman's biggest enemy is the Black man, which I've seen thrown around, and I don't agree with that at all. But I do understand that it hurts double because it's like, nigga, like, why are you acting brand new? Because if somebody would press your mama like this, you would be ready to list all the reasons why your mama is the way she is, right? Yeah. Why can't you extend that grace to me? And then the second thing I'll say is that like there's a sexualization, and this happens, yes, with Black men, but I find it especially with people, and this is now going beyond white, the way the Black woman's body is sexualized, right? Like, because there are even like, white Latinx people who love them a Black woman, but it's about the big booty, the lips, and this like, and it's really accentuating that stuff. And it's interesting because then it becomes hard to be a Black woman who doesn't look like a Cardi B or a Beyonce or some of these things that are more desirable. But it's almost like that's the expectation because those are the people who get elevated the most.
Yeah. It's so crazy. Like, and I also remember dating this Puerto Rican man who would make it very clear to me that, like, oh, you're not the only Black girl that I've dated. Like, I've dated another Black girl before, but she was like, you know, like light skin. You know, she was more like, you know, more like she looked like us, like she looked like Spanish or whatever, right? And even him telling me that, like, his sister, when she saw me for the first time, his sister was like, oh, your girlfriend's like black. Yeah, right.
Black.
Yeah. And then was like, basically would tell me like that, and I don't know, like he would tell me these things that people would say about me upon seeing me, like their responses as far as like seeing me with him, and telling me it as if it was like a compliment. Like he would tell me like one of his homies who was also a Latino man and also like very like, you know, white passing, a little bit more conquistador blood versus like African slave or Taino blood, right?
I had one of those.
Yeah, and like, you know, would tell me that like, oh, I see you, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, you know, I thought about that too. Like, you know, I was with my girl for a minute and I thought that, you know, if I ever get back out there again and I start dating, I'm gonna give a morena a shot. Like, what? Like
And
that's
people don't
something
hear
that
themselves
they
when they
don't
say shit
fucking
like
when
that
they
to
hear,
people who
and
are.
I'm literally there like, what? Like, and you think that's okay? And you said what? Like, you know what I mean? And things like that, that people don't think that they're fetishizing. They don't think that they're like, you know, doing this like fun experimental thing when they're dating Black women. And I'm like, I'm a fucking person, bro. Like, with a whole fucking life and experiences and emotions and stories to tell, the same way that you are that person. Like, why is like dating me looked at as a fucking adventure?
Absolutely.
And that's like, I can't, like, I mean, it is, but you know, just because it's me, like, not because of my Blackness. And like, to me, that's one of the most like irritating things that like, and I'm 30 years old now, like, and I've been dating since what, like, since I was 18. Like, yo, I'm like 12 years into this shit. And it's like, I'm hearing the same things from grown ass people. Like, it's not like I'm 30 dating the same 18-year-olds. Like, I'm 30
Right.
dating like 30 and above. And this is how y'all really think. And y'all are the people raising children.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting. And to speak to raising children, this is a perfect segue. Like, what are some of the ways in which you either growing up, and whether that's evolved or not, I'd love to hear, what were the standards of what you expected your partner to be, what you expected them to have, like outside of race, like what were the things that, what were your first impressions of what a partner should be and how has that evolved?
I think before, I don't really think I had that. Like, I didn't have a clear vision as far as like who I wanted that person to be, outside of them just being somebody that was loving and like essentially like a best friend, right? Somebody that I was just like, excuse me, just somebody that was very like easy to get along with, and not only just easy to get along with, but like we had fun together. And I think I did find that. But then in finding that, I realized that there were so many things that had to go along with that in order for it to be something prosperous or something that would, you know, have longevity, right? And so where I am now is that, and it's not to say that my list is like so long, but there are some non-negotiables. Like for me, like I want someone who is a God-fearing man. Like to me, that's important. And you know, not someone that's just like, you know, I believe in the cosmos and I'm spiritual. Like,
Right.
but do you believe in God though? Like that, like specifically that. And just because of where I am in my faith, and I want someone that kind of like shares in that sort of belief as well, but not rigid. You know what I mean? As far
Right.
as like, because even where I am with my faith is like, I'm not like this, and I hate calling myself a Christian because I feel like it sort of denotes this like sort of rigidity and like religion and like,
Right.
which I'm so not about. Very less religion and more like spirituality, but with sort of the constructs of that, knowing that, there's truth in the stories that we tell across all religions and things like that. But, that comes with time, and finding somebody that is that evolved spiritually is very difficult. And then also someone who is grown. Can we talk about it? Because these people, their birth certificates are saying grown, their driver's license say grown, but the way they show up is not. The way they show up is very much giving DZ Discovery Zone. It's giving
Discovery Zone.
it's giving Happy Meal. It's giving me Kids Bop. And I'm very much not here for that. And I feel like there's this kind of quote that we always hear about, like, spiritual women or like women who are naturally like healers would always attract men that need healing. Like, I'm sick and tired of healing these motherfuckers or trying to heal them. Like, and I've literally have made clear that that is very much not my ministry anymore. But to some extent, for some reason, I'm still attracting some of these broken men. And it's very much been an issue. So I feel like after every situation or every relationship, like I kind of have to get more clear with myself about the things that I want and the things that I'm not willing to compromise on. So I kind of rambled a little bit, but I hope I answered.
No, yeah, no, that's an answer for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Daigi, we wanted to know, what was your community's response to your dating interests?
Woo.
The laugh.
You gotta laugh because, honey, so I've also like, I'm the type of person that like, I not only live outside the box, but I date outside the box, right? So I've dated like all kinds of men, Black, now white. I can say that I've dated white men. Probably won't do that again.
I
We'll
love how
see.
you say it all the time. You make it clear that you're not sure that that's ever going to happen again.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if it's maybe like, we'll see if like I run into like Christopher Jamal Evans.
He need a little Jamal in him.
Look, because I don't know. That's a whole different story. But yeah, no, it's a no for me usually automatically with white men. Sorry, not sorry, but just from my experiences. And what's crazy is like I've kind of had like my little speculations, and then I experienced it and I was like, oh, look, I was right. Stories. I got stories on stories from that. But it's been, because I've basically dated pretty much everyone as far as like Black, white, Asian, Latino. It's definitely been mixed. Like I feel like people never know. Like when I say I'm dating someone, people never know who the fuck to expect. They can't picture what this guy is gonna look like.
I can attest to that. I never assume.
Yeah, don't assume with me because you're not gonna know. Like, ha, I got you, bitch. Look at you. Now you surprised. You didn't even think you was gonna be. That's how I date. And it's really, for me, it's about the energy for me. It's about the energy of the person. It's about the things that we can relate on. It's about how we connect with each other and that vibe and that connection. But also, I feel like it's so important to me, no matter who you are and what you look like, that you're supportive of who I am, not just as an artist, not just as a woman, but as a Black woman, right? And how I show up and are so respectful of that. And so I feel like I've gotten that for the most part to an extent. And I think that's been the breaking points in all of my relationships, is that people are so here for you and they want to rock with you and they want to ride with you until they can't, you know what I mean? Or until they can't relate anymore. Or maybe they see themselves sort of being a little bit more stagnant or just mired to mediocrity. And they can't grasp the fact that you can be this expansive, that you can be this and all of this at once. And I feel like sometimes it's intimidating, but I don't feel like it's intimidating so much as they're just intimidated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
it's always been a weird response. I remember the first boyfriend that I brought home was like Puerto Rican, and I felt like it was very much like my family. I come from a Jamaican family, and my Jamaican family is always like, I feel like when an outsider like comes among us, we're like, let's give them like the weirdest thing that they could possibly eat that they're not used to and see how they react to it, and kind of like judge them based on that.
No.
So, it was so funny, but like it wasn't like the weirdest, but like that was like the first time that he ever had like curry goat, and like he like absolutely loved it. And so my mom was like, oh, great.
Right, as long as she doesn't need to modify
Yes.
her menu.
Like we can keep him, like that's fine. But so funny that like low-key in reverse, his family did the same thing to me, because like it was like, yeah, it wasn't until then that I realized that like they gave me octopus, child. It's octopus salad. And like I didn't realize that this was a thing that Puerto Ricans do or whatever. I mean, now pulpo, right? And so now I'm used to it, you know. But like, you know, when I already knew what it was because we did it to him. So when, you know, when I pulled up with I was like, oh.
With the smile.
And I saw these tentacles on my plate, baby. And I was like, you know, I'm still right. I'm a fear factor this with a smile. But I actually ended up liking it. So there was that. And I feel like I also, at first I was like it was different, but I got accustomed to it. But yeah, that's one thing about us as far as was like, I feel like as Black people in general, but West Indians, like we're generally like very welcoming. Like Jamaicans, like we'll crack jokes on you all day, every day. But then at the same time, we're also going to be pretty embracing. And then also like my family has like background with like Cuban ancestry and things like that. And like one of my great aunts who we just buried, God rest her soul, maybe about 2 years back, was also, I think one of the last relatives, her twin sister included, who's still alive, was born in Cuba that we know of, you know, and that we still have connections to. So, you know, they're gonna talk their shit, but
So what would you say is a misconception that people have around what you may want in the relationship when you go in?
A misconception. I feel like it can either be one of two things. I think that the misconception is actually, it's really just one. It's really just one. It just shows up in different ways. I'm learning is that a lot of these men don't really want a girlfriend or a wife. Like they want a mother that gives them regular head.
Talk about it.
And I feel like that's so real. And I think it's so important to now I'm seeing not only, you know, as far as like their dads, but like to see what the relationships are with their mothers. And it can kind of vary, but that's why I'm like, it's so important for me to like get to know a person before I jump in with both feet and completely commit, right? But that's really what I've been discovering is that like independent women have it really hard when dating because we're also very clear on the things that we want and the things that we're capable of doing with ourselves for ourselves. But then at the same time, we do want our men to show up as men and in their truest form and whatever that means for them. And I'm big on that. Like I'm big on like not overstepping in a sense of like, just in any relationship and just allowing people to be who they are. Whether your man is a little bit more masculine and he kind of wants to play that role or take on that role. And it doesn't always mean that like they have to run shit, right? But it just kind of means that like they just have to feel like it. Like you just, you know what I mean? Like the best thing that you can do, exactly, give them the illusion that they're kind of like, you know, whatever the case may be. And it doesn't always have to be this like competition and this back and forth and this like, oh, you know, like that's something that they kind of have to open up to on their own, is like getting accustomed to that dynamic. And everyone has to get accustomed to some dynamic. But I feel like that's been the biggest thing. Is like, for me, in my experience, they want to be mothered. They want you to do everything for them. They want you to do the things that their mama does. Like they want you to cook. Like, oh boy, that I was recently seeing was literally like, why isn't anything ready for me when I come home?
What?
You see? And now you see why that's no longer a thing. Because
what?
Because like, I'm sorry, you said what now?
Right.
Like, wait, what? Like honestly,
did he ask and you were like, no? And then he was like, oh, like,
no, that was just the expectation. And that's the problem. Or they give with the expectation to receive something. But not only just to receive something, but to receive something very specific that they never really voiced in the beginning. I have so much respect for men that, like, regardless of, like, I mean, I may not respect their views, but I have respect for the man that can come to you and be like, yo, this is what I want. This is what I want for my woman, and blah, blah, blah. And just be upfront. Like, bro, I'm not the girl for you. Pero I appreciate you, you know, laying it out on the table and letting me know that I can just walk away from now and I don't have to waste 3-4 months of my time and find out later. Exactly.
Right.
So yeah, like more of that. Because I feel like also men like that, by the number of rejections that they get, they're gonna have to realize that they gotta do some self-reflection and they gotta tweak their little list. Okay. So
fuck with it.
There's also that.
Do you think that you can date white and stay woke or be woke?
I wouldn't know. I literally, like, me speaking from experience, I was just too woke for those situations. So I had to dip out. Because I just couldn't, like, I literally just couldn't. I had one man tell me that, like, he used his white privilege to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, the fact that you're so, one, you're so aware, and two, you're so comfortable expressing that to a Black woman, like, who literally has like the least amount of privilege in this nation. And you were like kind of like making light of it. Like it was a joke and it was so fun for you to do this. And it was like, this seems like a fun talking point. Like, are you dumb? I also had another man tell me that, like, when he got into an argument with an Indian man in a convenience store based on the fact that the man was like coughing and like wasn't covering his mouth. And he was telling him like, hey, you know, cover your mouth, whatever the case may be. They were on the line, right? So he was pretty close to him when this guy was coughing, which I'm like, yo, that's warranted. Like, that's nasty as shit. Like somebody just coughing out in the open without covering their mouth. I'd say something too. But he, in the heat of this argument, and this is how, you know, you always see people for who they are when they show up in these little heated situations, they reveal themselves. He said to this man, this Indian man, this older Indian man, that's not how we do things here.
Oh, nope.
Right.
Go somewhere, John Smith.
looked at him sideways, and then he was like, that kind of came off kind of wrong, right? That sounded kind of racist. Sir, you have to ask. If you have the fact that you have to ask lets me know that you are knowingly trying it. Knowingly.
Yep.
You know? So there's that. And then there's the level of entitlement that you just kind of like, I don't have time to sit there and break down. And even whether they're aware of it or not, they do it. Even my most woke white folk that I know and love, also kind of show up in spaces in a certain kind of way where I'm always like, and they'd be like, oh yeah, you're right. And I'm like, yeah. I don't got time to do that in my relationship. I also don't have time to explain myself. I'm not explaining to you why I need a silk scarf to tie my head. I'm not explaining to you why I need to wear
the same Discovery Channel.
Okay, I'm not explaining to you why you're not about to come at my head with this fine tooth comb, or why I need to deep condition every week, or why I can't use whatever this lotion is that you use because I need my shea butter. It's winter and you're bugging. And like, you know what I mean? Like there's all of those little nuances that like I'm also not willing to sort of give someone access to, number one, and then also feel like I'm always in a mode of like explaining. So no, I want to feel comfortable. You know?
Skittles, what about you? I'm curious. I don't know if I know your answer around this.
What do you mean?
Do you think you could be woke and still date a white guy as a Latino man?
I feel like my natural taste for white men has diminished like so far. I just don't even look at them like that, you know what I mean? Like it's
this is
just
not
like,
even in your line of vision. But where does that come from?
I don't know. I feel like, you know, naturally growing up, like I guess in my community, I was more attracted to men of color, whatever. And then like my experience with white men has been so consistent with like, you know, just shit that I don't like in terms of like whether it comes from like things like toxic masculinity or just like, you know, just the way that white men carry themselves in situations. Like I've never been.
Is it the pink stick Skittles? You could tell us the truth.
Also a thing. Also a thing.
That's why, you know, I always say if I end up with a white man, he's going to be a white Latino, probably, right? Because white Latino men, right, they white passing, they Latino, but the dick be tan. I could do that. I could do that.
That's true. You know, exactly. And I feel like also like Sicilian men.
I've never had an Italian man in my life.
So there's that. That's also a thing. Because I feel like not Italian, but Sicilian specifically.
Right.
Because then like you also got to remember in proximity, Sicily is very close to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got the island of Malta and like all of that sort of region or whatever. So I'm not a genealogist, but you know, some things
some things just add up.
Some things just added up. Some things when you give a little social studies lesson. So through migration and cultural diffusion,
I love it. So Daigi, last question on this. If you were to give some words of advice or some words of affirmation for other Black women and Black people who are dating, what piece of advice would you give them? Words, affirmations.
I think I would say you're enough. That would be like my first and foremost, is that you are enough. I feel like in a lot of these spaces that we show up, especially in light of like where my mind has been this week with regards to like body positivity and like thinking about where you came from, Jaleesa, with your experience of like, you know what I mean? And like, just like having those sort of like qualms or things like that. I feel like sometimes we're often judged, especially as a darker skinned Black woman. Like I feel like that happens to me very often. But one, you are enough. You're powerful. And you're allowed to be powerful, but you're also allowed to be soft. You're also allowed to be vulnerable. You can be all of those things and still be beautiful. And that doesn't take away from your worth and your value as a woman. If anything, it adds to it. Like, you are so much more than these tiny little boxes that they're trying to put you in. You're expansive, and you deserve someone and a partner that is just as expansive, that's going to grow with you. So, yeah.
Amen. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us today. Please let us know any shout outs. Where can we find you on the social webs?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at The Perfect Day. Really, that's just it right now. We're working on the other ones, the other modes of communication, but you can find me on Instagram at @theperfect_DAI. I'll be there giving you your daily dose of day, whether it's a little bit of humor, whether it's a little life lesson. I'm big on like learning as you go, and my platform, I feel like, is all about not just those experiences, but also the things that I've learned from those experiences. So definitely stay tapped in for that. And I'm open to like dialogue and hearing other people's perspectives and stuff. And, you know, if you call now, just kidding, but you know, get into that. And that's really what it's all about. Like, I feel like a lot of the times, even when it comes to information, whether it's something that's going to be lucrative, whether it's something that's going to be helpful, I feel like we kind of hoard that and we kind of keep that to ourselves and we put it in our diary. And I'm very big on being an open book. And like, I'm big on like putting that out there and letting people know, like, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I've learned from this situation, because I know that my situation or my circumstances aren't unique, and there's always someone else going through it too. So I'm big on building community that way, just through shared experience.
Yes. That's true empowerment right there.
Yeah.
Skittles, where can they find us?
Y'all can find us at Ladies Who Brunch on Instagram, at Ladies Brunch on Twitter, and at Jaleesa on Instagram, and at The Real Skittles on Instagram as well.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. What a wonderful conversation. And until next time, guys, brunch.